Hey everyone, all this month we are taking time to celebrate. We're celebrating the Journey's 20th birthday.
And I'm here with Mike.
With me here today is Christy. We're celebrating what God has done in our lives, what He's done in our community, and we get to hear stories from people who have been a part of the Journey in some way over the last 20 years.
And Mike, tell us a little about when you first started coming to the Journey. It was 16 years ago or so?
It's got to be a little more than 16 years ago, about 18 years ago
wow,
from what
yeah.
I figure, based on Charlie's scar on his head.
And yeah, I remember we were talking about that recently of when they first started coming, his kid bumped his head and it was like bleeding all over the place. And it was like a church morning emergency, but he's all good now.
He's all good
now.
Yep.
That's why he has the scar though. So
We've been coming here roughly that 18 years and really having the opportunity to bring the boys up in church was probably the most rewarding part of the whole thing. I mean, there was so much more that came with it, whether it was volunteering on the tech team or getting volunteered to be on the tech team, to kind of helping with the network stuff, to participating in the lead team. You know, it's been a great ride.
I've been coming to the Journey about 12 years. Prior to that, I came a few times with my son, who was baptized here. Outside of that, going to church was not something that I did on a regular basis. In 2008, my son went abroad to work, and my daughter graduated high school, and I found myself being an empty nester, which was a difficult thing to go through. I had been, from high school, I was a mom, and then I was married, and then I was divorced, not once, but twice. So I found myself asking God, what do I do next? Then one day I got a invite from the Journey in the mail to come to church. I don't remember the message per se that was given that first day, but I do remember Paul was in a Mickey Mouse shirt, and
Well, that's important.
and I do remember the feeling that the message that he gave that day spoke to me directly, and I've been coming to church ever since. Those connection cards that are in the front seats of the chairs, they are amazing. I filled one out, and shortly after that, you called me, and I got connected with a small group, and then after that, Julie called me, and I got connected with the kids' room. Doing both of those has changed a lot of my life. I've been able to connect with adults and kids, and watching toddlers learn about Jesus is truly amazing.
Wow, that's cool. One other thing you've been a part of is our network teams. And maybe you could share one of the favorite things about network teams, but also how has that impacted your relationship with Jesus?
I mean, who knew that being part of a network team would have such an amazing impact on me and others? We've been able to create so many opportunities with families, including the kids, helping people in need and spreading the love of Jesus. I came across a couple of verses that spoke to my heart. Proverbs 22:6. Start the children on the way they should go, and even when they're old, they will not turn from it. And Romans 12:10. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. I feel that being a part of the Journey Church and the network teams gives us an opportunity to look beyond ourselves, sharing the love of Jesus and connecting with others. And I'm so grateful to have been a part of this experience.
Getting asked to help kind of be on the forefront of starting the networks we didn't know what to expect. I had no idea what to expect. From the planning standpoint, all that, Mark had all that together, and it was an awesome experience, but none of us really knew how it was going to turn out. And probably the most surprising thing is that we could go and work in the community and help the community, but you would come out feeling like you were more rewarded than what you actually went and did. And seeing some of the impact that was made in the community was probably the neatest part of the whole thing, and continues to be, you know.
Yeah, it's awesome to see like the difference you make in the community, but also you build these relationships, and we have like ongoing relationship with the schools, and or just seeing people who we serve end up coming, and it's a great way to show God's love in action.
Yeah, it's great. And that's the other thing. I mean, talking about doing life with others that are on the same trajectory, all of that kind of really grows out of being in the network and doing that with those people. So that
Yeah.
was awesome.
So you would say like serving not only gave you the chance to make an impact, but built the relationships around that and really helped you in your walk with Christ.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
No question.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing today, Mike, and thanks for being a big part of our church over the
Oh,
last
no,
18 years.
thanks for having me to share. That's awesome. I'm very excited.
And yeah, thanks for, we heard Mike and Christy there for a little bit. And just to kind of continue the conversation, Josh is up here with me.
Hello.
Yeah, hi, Josh. And yeah, we're just going to kind of continue talking a little bit about his experience and connect with the video. So maybe, Josh, just share a little bit when you started coming to the journey. What was that like for you? But then you came back again and again, and here you are still. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we've been coming here for 17 years. We were invited by a coworker. So, one of our core principles is to invest and invite. And so one of my coworkers had invited us to come. And it was almost, I think it was right around this time, 17 years ago, because my wife was pregnant with my daughter, Elaine. And she had a really troubled pregnancy. And so she was on and off bed rest. So it was a lot of times it was just me coming. But Sarah came too. And then we had Elaine really early. She was born at 30 weeks. And so we were in the NICU in Grand Rapids and driving back and forth. And I think about a week after we had her through an emergency C-section, we came back to church and we were kind of dazed. We hadn't slept a whole lot. We weren't sure what was going on. And remember, I think it was Matt came up to me. He's like, "How you doing?" I'm like, what? And then all of a sudden, Matt kind of wrapped his arms around us, and the journey did. And Matt came over and brought a meal over, and all of a sudden these meals just started showing up at our house. And I grew up in church, but hadn't experienced that before, where all of a sudden this church who barely knew us, they saw a need and they reached out and they started to fulfill it. So those meals were huge because again, we were for 6.5 weeks, we were driving to Grand Rapids every night to go see our daughter. So just to have just that little expression of love. Was huge at that moment in our life.
Yeah. Are the meals still coming?
They stopped.
Oh, okay.
With the cost of groceries, and if you've seen my son, we go through a lot of groceries. So.
Big football player. He eats a lot. Yeah. Well, sorry they stopped. But I know you guys have done meals for other people as well along the way. One of the things those guys shared a little bit, and actually kind of a really big part of what the journey is about spreading kindness. We say that a lot around here is spreading God's kindness and sharing His love to people in the world and the community around us. And a big part of that is our network teams, which you've been a part of. So maybe just share, your involvement in network teams and maybe one thing you love most about them.
So like Mike on the video, I had the opportunity to be a part of networks right from the get-go. And I remember meeting with Mark and with Matt, and they're talking about these things that they wanted to do called networks. I'm like, okay, well, it makes some sense, right? I'd participated in small groups and where you get together and you talk about yourself, but networks really gave us an opportunity to go out and live out the mission and to spread kindness and to pay it forward in a lot of ways. And that really has developed in my life. It's developed a lot of muscle memory as far as this is just how you do. This is how you can show God's love, and you can spread kindness from that standpoint. And so it's developed that muscle memory. It's developed the habitual habits for myself, and I now serve on some boards. I serve on the lead team. I've served in pretty much every capacity that you can serve at the Journey, from Journey Teens to the kids stuff, to lead team, to tech. So it's really kind of embodied. It's just what we do now. We go when there's a network thing. It's like, I guess I'll go and rake some leaves or move some brush or paint or whatever we got to do. But it's just it's a way to live out the mission and to spread that kindness and pay it forward.
And the older we get, there is more muscle memory after some of those projects, right?
Well, I think it's as the older we get, the more muscle memory we need.
Yeah, right. And a big part of the journey has always been about spreading kindness. And the reason we're so intentional about that is because we actually want to live out what we talk about. And we can say all kinds of things on stage, and we can do it in our personal life, but like as a team, when we go out and do those things, like we can accomplish more together than we can by ourselves. So we don't want to just like talk about showing God's love. We actually want to go do that together. And it's not so we look good. It's not like, oh, look how good we are. And it's not about people looking at us. It's we want people to see God. Like we want people to see in this community God's love even more than ours. But there is this side benefit of it that, like Mike shared, like when we go and serve, like we're actually experiencing something. And part of that is because the way God has made us, He's created us to do good works and to do it together and share His love with other people. Like we're actually made for that. So there's this connection that happens when we go and serve together. We're actually connecting with Jesus. Like it's not like maybe some other ways we think about like singing worship songs, which is great, but this is like we are helping someone else. We're actually with Jesus in that we can grow closer to Him. So one last thing I just want to mention. So how maybe a time when you've shared or when you've served that you or been a part of the networks that has actually helped your own relationship with Jesus?
You hear from a lot of people where, I got to get up on a Saturday morning and I got to go help somebody. But then you get there and you're doing something good, you're doing something kind, you're paying it forward, and it just kind of resurges your belief, and it makes you feel good, and it makes you feel good for the right reasons. You're spreading that kindness and you're helping somebody else out, and to see, if you've participated in these network teams, you see these. If you're helping somebody's yard, somebody that comes out and they're so grateful, they're crying, or we do a lot with the Tri-Cities with the Love Garden, and just knowing that we might spend an hour or 2 hours just helping in a garden, cleaning up or helping plant, and then those little moments, those little seeds then spread to hundreds of people, and so it's something that again we can pay it forward, and we can do, and so that just resurges in myself, and it strengthens my own faith.
Yeah, thanks, Josh, for sharing. Appreciate you being up here today. Good job. And Matt's going to be coming in just a minute, so let's check this out.
All right, hey, all this month we're going to be taking kind of a look back at where we've been as a church and a look forward to where we're going, and we're going to be hearing stories like we heard today all month long, and man, I love hearing the experience that people have had and what God is doing in their life, so I'm looking forward to this whole month, and as we're thinking about memories and things like that, I don't know if you do this whenever I'm on Facebook, I always check my Facebook memories. I don't know if you do that or not. And most of the time you look back and it'll be like you posted something 15 years ago. You're like, what was I thinking? I'm an idiot. It's like, but a lot of times you get to see I get to see these cool pictures of my kids growing up. And recently I had this memory pop up, and it was this restaurant that used to be in Muskegon. It was called Mia and Grace. Anyone ever been to Mia and Grace when they were here? I see a few hands, not very many. You guys missed out. It's closed now. but it was an amazing restaurant. It was like my favorite place. It's a little bit on the gourmet side, but it wasn't like over the top. It was just, they did a lot of different things. They didn't have like a menu. They would just write a bunch of stuff on paper on the wall because every week there was like different things. But one of the things they always had was a sandwich. It was a duck PB&J, and you're like, what? That sounds horrible. But what it was like duck confit, which is like duck cooked in its own fat, so it's like really tender and juicy and good. And they had like this cashew butter on it and pepper jelly, and they had this bread. It was like a 1,000-year-old bread recipe they used, and it was just like one of my favorite things to eat. It was so good. And there was like a ton of other stuff. I could go on and on about it because it was one of my favorite spots. But then one day, they closed up shop. No more. Maybe you've had that happen to one of your favorite spots. Maybe it wasn't a restaurant, just maybe another spot. Like during the pandemic, we lost a bunch of different spots. Or I know there was this place over in the Points, which is like across the highway, Grand Haven Road in Sternberg, and there was like this Mexican restaurant in there. We tried to like single-handedly keep them in business because we'd go there so often, and because they were super good and cheap, and then they didn't make it. And I hate when those places close down because like especially like me and Grace, that was my favorite place. Like I love that place. And it was just gone. And now it's just like this memory that I missed. Well, as we talk about where we've been over the last 20 years, one of the things we've always said as a church is we want to make an impact in our community. Like that restaurant, it made an impact on me. Like I miss that place. Like I wish it was still there. It made an impact on me. In a much bigger sense, as a church, we want to make an impact in our community. And we've always said this throughout our history. Like if for some reason the journey was like zapped and we were gone, or if for some weird reason we'd have to close things down or something, would anyone even notice? Would anyone even care? Those have been like driving questions for us because we want to make a difference. We want to make an impact in our community. And one of the best compliments throughout our 20-year history was from this guy. He didn't go to our church. He didn't go to any church, actually. He heard about the journey, and he said, oh, you're that church that, like, does stuff. That's what he thought, that does stuff. What he was saying is, like, you actually go into the community and, like, help people is what he was trying to get to. But in his mind, he was like, you guys actually do something. And to me, like, I thought that was a huge compliment, that someone would take notice that we are spreading God's love. I mean, this is so important because this is what Jesus calls us to do. We're going to look at a couple of verses quickly this morning. And so I'm going to encourage you, if you don't have a Bible, to check out the YouVersion Bible app. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. We're going to really be incorporating this into more of what we do on Sundays, too. And so you can follow us in there. If you want to follow along today, there's some little directions there. You can open up your Bible app, and you can click down in the More section down in the corner. And there's events. You can find the journey. There's the verses we're going to be reading and some other things in there. You might want to check that out. And so as we look at these verses, this is the reason why this has been a driving force of who we are as a church, because this is what God calls us to do. I want you to look at these words of Jesus with me in John chapter 13. Here's what he says. John chapter 13, John records Jesus' words. He says, "A new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciple if you love one another." Jesus says, people will know you are my followers. People will know me because of how you love others. He says this is a new direction. If you think about it, like this is not something that happens in our world, right? People are often self-focused. They're just worried about themselves, how I can get ahead. I'm just worried about making me happy. I want to do the things that just make me happy. Whether it makes everyone else unhappy doesn't matter. I just want to do what makes me happy. Or I'm just worried about getting through my day or whatever it might be. It's just the self-focused direction of their life. And Jesus says there's a new way to live. I have a new command for you, to love each other in such a way that people will see this love and they'll know there's something different there. And if you are my follower, he says, you got to love like I loved you. Like we sang some songs today about that, about his reckless love. Like he loves us no matter who we are, no matter what we've done. And he has this unconditional love for us. And he says, like I've loved you, I want you to love other people. Because if you love like that, they'll get a glimpse of who I am. So as a church, like this is something that we want to be a big part of who we are. This has been part of our history. And as we're talking about not only where we've been, but where we're going, this is a part of who we are going to be always. You know, in fact, as a church, we try to even lean a little heavier on the side of being outward focused. It's so easy to be inward focused because we can get busy or wrapped up with the hardships of life. And we want to be a church where we support each other and where we're better together. But we know it's so easy just to become inward focused. So as a church, we kind of even lean a little heavier on this because we want to be known for our love so that people can get a glimpse of who God is. And we do this as a church. We've heard some stories about how we've done this as a church throughout our history already today. But the question really is not just about are we known for our love as a church, but are we going to be a group of individuals who are known for our love? That's a question maybe for you. In your circles that you run in, at work or at school, in your neighborhood, with your friends, what are you known for? What are you known for? Are you known for how you love others, how you care for others? Jesus says this is what we're called to do, to be known for our love, because that will give them a glimpse of Jesus. I want you to think about that. Maybe when you're at work this week or at school, to think like this might be the only chance for your friends or the people you are around, your coworkers, your classmates. This might be the only glimpse of Jesus they ever get, will be how you love them and care for them. Jesus calls us to be known for our love because that's how they will see him. We see this is kind of echoed in Colossians chapter 3. The Apostle Paul writes this letter to the book in the book of Colossians, kind of echoing Jesus' thoughts here. He says, "Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourself with compassion and kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another if there's any grievances against you. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. And over all these virtues, put on love, binding them together in perfect unity." So again, we see this idea here to be clothing our life. What people see as we live out our life on the outside of our life is compassion and kindness and forgiveness and love. That's what we're called to do. But I know this. Like we said, most people don't live this way. In fact, if we're all honest, if I'm being honest, today is as much for me as it is for anyone else because we're all selfish and we're all self-focused. And this is something we have to fight against. And maybe you're like, okay, I want to be more loving and kind, but man, you don't know my neighbors. Like, they're jerks. Or maybe you're like, those people I work with, oh man, like that's hard. And maybe you're feeling that, or like, man, you don't know how hard it is at school, or whatever it might be. Like, and I can say, like, I know. Like, this is a struggle for all of us. And you know what? We're probably that person for someone else at work or school. They're like, you don't know that person I work with, and that's maybe us. So, man, but this is a call for us to live differently. And what we see is when we begin to spread kindness and clothe ourselves with compassion and be known for our love, I think we get to end up in that spot like we heard a few of those stories today, where it begins to not only help the person out, but it begins to shift our life too. And we get to experience God working in us and through us, and it brings bigger purpose to our life. So maybe like, how do I do this? Like, how do I take steps to get there? Well, it continues on in Colossians 3, verse 15, it says this: "Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts. Since as members of one body, you're called to peace. And be thankful. Let the message of Christ dwell among you richly as you teach and admonish one another with all the wisdoms through the psalms, hymns, songs from the Spirit, singing with God with gratitude in our hearts. And whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to the God the Father through him." We're going to look back at a few points in this verse here. It says, beginning, let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts. If we're going to clothe ourselves with compassion and kindness, it's going to take a heart at peace. What's ruling your heart? See, if anxiety or busyness is ruling in your heart, we're not going to have space for other people. We're not going to have patience because we're already stretched thin. We're going to respond out of like our busyness, or we're just going to blow off the opportunity to share that kindness with other people because busyness and anxiety is ruling in our hearts. We need to have his peace rule in our hearts. What's ruling in your heart? You know, if anger or bitterness is ruling in our heart, we often respond to people, again, not with kindness, but with a sharp edge or with anger, because that's what's on the inside is coming out. And sometimes that comes out even with people that we're not angry at, because this anger is ruling in our hearts. We have to let the peace of God rule in our hearts. Or maybe it's jealousy or envy. Like, We know we should spread kindness. We know we should clothe ourselves with compassion and kindness, but we look at the people around us and we're like, man, I deserve to be in that spot, or they don't deserve that. And we start judging other people, or we begin to look at situations and be like, well, I'm not going to help them because they already have this, and we're ruling out of this jealousy or envy in our hearts instead of this peace, knowing that God's over all things and he's in control of things. It says we're supposed to be thankful. Have peace rule in our hearts and be thankful for what we have. And it says let God's words dwell in us richly. Like not just know about God, not just know a few things about the Bible, but let his words dwell in us richly. Like to guide our life and direct our life. Because that begins to shape how we see ourselves and how we see others and how we face the situations in life. And then it goes on at the end, it says, whatever you do, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. So it's saying like, look at your life with a bigger purpose. Do it like you're doing it for God. When you show up for work, you're not just there to earn a paycheck and to do a task. You're there because you have an opportunity to clothe yourself with compassion and kindness and to be known for your love so that they might get a glimpse of Jesus. At school, you're not just there to go to your classes. You have the opportunity to share God's love every day. It brings a bigger purpose to what we're doing. It shows us there's something more. Because if it's just work or school or trying to get ahead for ourselves, that's just going to leave us in this place that's empty. We heard the stories today of like how fulfilling it was when they would help other people and how that shifted their life and their perspective. This is what it's talking about. Let God's peace rule in our hearts, so out of our hearts, kindness can grow. And then let his words and our priorities shift so we see ourselves in this world in a different perspective because we're doing it like we're doing it for him. I know it's not easy. I know it's challenging. I know sometimes we face hard times or we face hardship ourselves or we are in relationships where it's hard to be kind to others. But we can respond with kindness if we let his peace rule in our hearts, if we let him dwell in us richly, if we continue to see our life differently. Jesus said these words, if you're willing to lose your life, that's when you actually will find it. And I think that's the key, is that if we are willing to give our life away, then we actually find a life of purpose and meaning. You know, over the last 20 years, spreading kindness has been a major factor in our church, and it's going to continue to be in 20 or plus years ahead. But more so, the whole point of why we do what we do is not just to say, hey, look at, we break someone's leaves. It's to show God's love in a tangible way and to let his love shift our hearts. And so I hope that's your experience as you continue to take steps to do that it might shift your heart as well. Because if you're willing to lose your life, then you'll actually find it. I want to talk quickly about just a couple opportunities coming up. We're going to do this as a church. And again, we do these projects as a church because we want to be known in our community for this, and we want to do this together. But we also do these projects because it helps us to shift our hearts as well. So we have one thing coming up this next weekend, Big Serve Weekend. You can see the projects there. We have 4 projects that are going to be happening. These are network teams are kind of taking the head on some of these, but anyone can jump in on any of these projects. And all the details are on our website, and it has the directions to the locations. So on next Saturday, we have the Brennans who have been coming to our church for quite a while. Jerry's been battling cancer of many kinds, and he was actually just in the hospital again this week. So I've been praying with him, meeting with him quite a bit, and so we have an opportunity to go and just love on them. And so that's going to be happening on Saturday morning, as well as we have a relationship with the schools, and over at Lincoln Park, they have like this nature trail that's for the school and for the community. And so we're going to be doing some cleanup with that. And on Sunday, we have the Compassion Care Project. That will be happening actually Sunday morning. That's like a family project. So after the services next week, you can grab your kids, and in one of the rooms, we'll be coloring pages and writing letters to our Compassion kids that we sponsor in Peru. And then we have the community garden in the afternoon. We were going to have another project with our collaboration churches. We were going to be working down at the Boys and Girls Club. They were just opening down in Muskegon, but there was an arson, and that kind of but some things, the insurance kind of has to handle a bunch of things, and we can't come in and do some projects now. So that's a little disappointing, but they are actually doing some door hangers, and there's some details about that online too if you want to jump in with them as well. So this is an opportunity to do that. We also have Yard Ambush coming up first Saturday, November 4, and so some opportunities to do that. But again, these are opportunities for us to do it as a church, but the goal is for us to take this to heart and to do this as individuals as well. Will you join in? Because as we've seen throughout our history, and as we saw from the stories this morning, it shifts our hearts and it draws us closer to God. And you can have that opportunity to find a life with purpose and meaning if we're willing to give our lives away. Let's pray. God, I thank you for your great love for us and your kindness towards us that we don't deserve.